If there's one name that I come back to more than any other on this channel, it's definitely Mario Okada. I just love everything she touches, from anime to manga, that at the very least I leave entertained and see a slightly different approach to stories that others can't seem to come up with. A story revolving around sexually frustrated and curious high school girls is something I shouldn't give a damn about, because either it will be completely ridiculous and use the same gag over and over again, or it will come off as the author has no idea what it is they're talking about and makes the medium look worse than it really is. But within one episode I thought to myself, Mari did it again, and this is a show that I can't wait to see where it will go from here. There's this time in everyone's life where the human body is getting everything situated and chemical imbalances are happening, you're transitioning from child to teenager to then young adult. And it's a wild time for everyone involved. You start seeing childhood friends as people that get places excited that they never did before. You think this is the most important time in your life and everything is the end all or be all circumstance. And inexperienced teenagers think that sex is one of the most important things that if they don't do it right now, all hope is lost. This anime talks about a fairly wide array of topics, despite appearing to just be girls talking about sex despite having no knowledge on the subject matter at hand. The central cast are all a part of a literature club, where they generally read naughty books and try to better understand this adult world they are also curious about. And once one of them says they want to have sex before they die, which to her means before she loses her young appealing charm, they all start questioning who, where, and how they all want to become women. The series is hilarious. It's also disturbing at times, but at the end of the day, it's just painfully relatable. In terms of the humor, a big reason I laughed as much as I did was, despite not ever being a high school girl myself, shocking I know, I could at least see the male equivalent to most of the situations, or just remembering girls from my school life who I'd overhear conversations identical to what's being said here. There's humor within this show that I laugh at not because it was meant to be a joke, but as someone who has grown past their mindset, it's hilarious to hear these girls talk about how much sex they have or who they'll date next when 99% of these people are actually just as plain boring and inexperienced as those they are making fun of. With the ones who are, generally are throwing themselves away for no reason but quick and mindless pleasure, not realizing what it is they actually crave. You'll have numerous innuendos where characters start thinking about sex and everything they now look at reminds them of that taboo contact that turns them from a little girl into a grown woman. A train entering a tunnel, fingers slipping inside a bowling ball, the amount of innocence some of these girls have, and how the general aspects of life get them flustered because they're starting to crave more adult-oriented activities is just so pure and adorable that I laughed at nearly every scene such as this. The pureness to many of these sequences is just really well done. It feels like it's written by an author who understands what it's like to grow up as a girl or even a boy during a pretty frightening time. In hindsight, it's the easiest time in your life, really. But growing up with a changing body, it freaks you the hell out or makes you act quite ridiculous. Seeing girls ranging from childlike with their obliviousness to the XXX world or the more bold behavior of others, it just feels like high school in the best possible sense. There's this scene early on where one of the characters, Kazusa, walks in on her childhood friend Izumi as he's doing the deed while watching some not so child-friendly videos. The reaction to this scene has to be some of the most realistic portrayals of walking in on someone touching themselves in anime, period. For anyone, this would be the end of the world to have their parents or friend walk in on them doing the deed. If it happens, what do? And most people would just try to play it off and say the first thing that comes to mind. Izumi acts like nothing happens, as his heart is about to rip from his chest and move to another country, as poor Kazusa processes what it is she just saw. It's a moment where you say the first thing that comes to mind, as you pull up your pants, and when the other side finally grasps what just happened, you run the hell away. Then once you see your childhood friend in that way, no longer will he be that little brother you once looked at, but now your childhood friend is becoming your childhood crush. There's so much to this series that whether we want to admit to it or not, it's painfully relatable. From sexual frustration to the confusion of what growing up really means. Everyone deals with this transition in a different way, and with the cast scene here, we get a fairly wide array of personalities and struggles. One of the more interesting characters for me was the wannabe author Hongo, who is trying to make her breakthrough with erotic novels, but as a girl with zero sexual experience, her writing comes across as a virgin living in his basement writing these tales. She does chat online with one male during naughty chat sessions, to try to get ideas for her writing until the day she learns who it is she's actually chatting with. It's one of the younger teachers at her school, who does seemingly have zero interest in high school girls, but is a sexual deviant himself. As she interacts with him more, she starts learning how to express her sexuality in a way that never came across as this is pandering to a demographic and trying to create a fetish scene, but rather as people grow up, their sexual desires and urges also change with them. You have characters who are unsure of what they want in a relationship like Momoko, who starts questioning why do girls go after guys when females have these features that she prefers over them, and where that topic can lead with characters such as Nina, or characters like Rika, who is bullied for being the loser of her class, but once she takes off her glasses, the shallowness of her peers shifts from a negative to a positive tone, but the only voice she gives a damn about is the one guy who all this time called her cute and showed genuine interest in her when the world seemingly was against her. But the one relationship that does stand out like a sore thumb has to be Nina and what happened and continues to happen with a former adult in her life. I don't say this as an insult, mind you. I'm happy the anime touched upon something fairly toxic in the real world in a way that didn't come across as look at how great underage relationships are, but rather this is creepy. There's a character in this series who is just a creep and preys on young girls. The anime doesn't shy away from this, and from Nina to Izumi, everyone agrees he's a scumbag. Whether people want to run away from the truth or not, there's plenty of people who prey on the young and it goes unnoticed by many around them. Though this man never touched Nina too badly, what he does or says is creepy. The idea that he raises girls such as her to be perfect and plays to his fetish, and how once they become an adult and lose their purity, he loses attraction towards them. The way their scenes are portrayed, it gives you another look about the world they're growing up in, that thankfully never made it into a fetish bait of look at the taboo relationship, but naturally, those who grow up around people such as this can be manipulated into trusting them more than they should, and I felt as Mari's writing nailed such a taboo topic in a fairly mature way, especially since it's quite polar opposite to the one that we see with Hongo. Both she and Nina have not so normal and one could say discussing relationships with those that should guide them and not take advantage of them. Nina's side will probably be the most horrible to look at for many, because the scumbag admits to liking young girls. The other says he has zero interest in them, but still helps a girl explore her sexuality without getting too physical. Both are not okay, but they aren't designed to be. It's meant to show a wide array of how different people grow up with weird feelings and how that can lead them to make bad decisions because of manipulation of another or just their own emotions. When we grow up, these decisions we make aren't always the best, and this anime represents that quite well. The way this series can be so gut-punching by making you shiver because of horrible people such as this, or hit you because it's wholesomely relatable, is quite special, as this is a series that, given to most authors, everything that it aims for I'd most likely rip into, as why anime gets made fun of by so many people, but in the right hands can be interesting character studies that doesn't glorify topics such as this, but give a realistic approach even if some of these topics shouldn't happen in the real world, but unfortunately do. People might latch onto the idea of some characters wanting to flash others in public and say this is just meant to be a joke or fan service, but no it isn't. Whether people want to admit to it or not, but kids are starting to experiment with sex earlier than ever these days, and always have in some way throughout every generation. Aspects like indecent exposure aren't just something that adults try out, even if parents try to act like their kids are still just their kids with nothing but pure thoughts within their minds. Though most of the series isn't discussing the taboo and creepy side of humanity, most of it is focused on the more relatable aspects about growing up and how your body now reacts to those around you. But I find the blend of relatable high school that we all know and love but also hate because what an awkward time for us all, mixed in with a couple of characters and arcs that we shy away from and pretend don't exist in reality but actually do, which have a really negative or potentially positive influence on others. It makes for a memorable series at the end of the day, even if you may not be as hooked on it as I currently am. When I completed the first episode, I knew I was going to love this series. It made me laugh, it made me cringe at the relatability to it, with me feeling embarrassed looking back at my own past and those around me during this time in my own life, while also showing a perspective of growing up in high school written in a way I hadn't seen done before. But as I started binging the episodes, I was really taken back at how this show was presented. Now, not just with the interesting presentation choice, such as how filters are applied to give it this bright and happy feeling as it contrasts the topics at hand, but how characters characters opened up. Things such as love triangles, we all hate them. With how many basic series use them to force drama with resolutions we all see coming a mile away. But when this series starts hinting at them, my first thought wasn't oh no, it was yeah, this series can probably nail it should it pursue it. Even if they didn't go down a love triangle route, when I started seeing the hints that it could, I wasn't worried at all, because this is a story with confidence that takes the real things about growing up, such as friends who like the same boy, the insecurities of one's body thinking those with the bigger chest will beat those with the smaller one, and all the other ridiculous mindsets that kids these age deal with. There's a moment after they all have a pillow fight after a tense conversation to cool things down where the dialogue is explaining how there's 10 boobs jiggling of all different shapes and sizes and how they're all having fun. Prior to this scene, there was a lot of insecurities floating around them, so despite this dialogue being so ridiculous that we laugh at it, it's also surprisingly wholesome and cute with how these teenage girls are starting to feel more comfortable about themselves and who they are, not who they aren't in comparison to those around them. It all comes across as a humble little story that doesn't need any real resolution, and anything they gave us works perfectly, at least for myself. I most likely can count on one hand how many series I'm fine with that never ended, didn't really continue, and the resolution they gave, I didn't really care what it was, because it wasn't what I was hoping for, but I still walk out saying, that's fine. This story being told here, despite having character arcs, even ones that still have a ways to go within their life, it feels to me as if I personally don't need to see everyone's through to the end, which I felt since the 3rd episode. If we did excellent, but with every episode I watched, I thought, well, I could walk out at any time and feel as if I've had a satisfying adventure. That high school life is crazy, and even once characters get laid or find a partner, their life isn't going to end there. The character arcs we followed this season isn't the end-all and be-all to their story. High school love isn't all that important. Very few childhood sweethearts end up together forever, but the importance of this time in their life isn't who ends up with who, but what they experienced along the way of growing up. That because their stories technically won't end until their death, even not knowing every single conclusion to who ends up with who, or where every character will go in the future, every step of the way, it just doesn't bother me. I would gladly watch 50 episodes of this with joy, but I can just as easily watch 12 episodes and sing the same amount of praise on the relatable take on high school and the pain of growing up as seen here. As even when you get the ending to the anime or the manga, these characters continue past the credits rolling that we see. Growing up never really stops, and neither does their lives, with the many hardships that they'll face along the way. You could see an ending where it speeds 20 years in the future to show you where they all ended up, but you would still know that there was 20 years of story that they experienced that we didn't get to see, which is totally fine. Their stories, they just can't end the exact same ways ours don't, until we take that final breath. That the purpose of this tale was to show a snippet of the craziness of growing up with an outsider's point of view. That yes, we see resolutions to certain character arcs, but those characters' arcs are just a small piece of their craziness that they will experience throughout their life. A story about young, sexually curious teenage girls isn't something you'll see me praise too often, but hey, any story can work in the correct hands, and as we see with this tale, it did it for me. But let me know what everyone thinks about this series or the video down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed my ramblings, be sure to leave a like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you have been new. Now lastly, there is my Patreon for those who want to go the extra mile and help support what I do around here even more, that is if you so wish. But until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.